Kalkadosh Boker Or Masechet Bava Kamma Daf 8a1 says the Gemara, Katani Mia Metzia. Let's look at the middle part of the Braita. If you remember, we just mentioned that if a person had Benonit and Ziborit, which means that he does not have any Edit whatsoever. Okay? So says the Gemara, he's got Benonit and Ziborit. Nezikin, right? Ubalchov, they collect from the Benonit. And Ketubat Isha, they collect from the Ziborit. Now, you're going to tell me now that we're going to do it b'shelo, which means that the mazik is going to pay the edit of his own karka, right? And that's how he pays also the loveh. So te'aseh benonit shelo ki edit v'yidache balchov etzel ziborit. So why don't we say that his benonit is edit, and then you should push off the balchov, which is in benonit, to the ziborit? That's the question. Meaning, if you're going to tell me that we're always evaluating the person himself, this person doesn't have Idit. He only has Benonit and Ziburit. So therefore, his Benonit should become Idit, and then push off the Balchov to the Ziburit. So says the Gemara, Hachab Ma'iskin, what are we dealing with? Kigon Shaita lo Idit umechara. He had Idit, and he sold it. What does that mean, he sold it? Right? He sold it. So he comes and he says, that's also what Rav Chassa says, he had Edit and he sold it. So therefore, since he did have Edit, at the end of the day, he did have it, right, during the time of the halva. So you cannot push off the balchov. Meaning, imagine right now, I have a big property, I sell it, and I say, sorry, I only have it. Now you're going to push the balchov down? Sorry, the balchov cannot do so. There's also logical. Let's learn the other Braita. The Braita was Benonit veZiborit. Nezikim beBenonit, we just said the Nezikim, they get the Benonit, and the Balchov, they get Ketubat Isha beZiborit. Kashin Adadi, we have a contradiction. So Elalav Shemamiyah, we learn from here, Shekana Italo Idit umechara. Here they had Idit and they sold it. Yekan Shelo Italo Idit umechara. And here he did not have Idit and he sold it. So you see from here that there's no stira. The first Braita is talking about that he had Idit at the time of the halva'a and he sold it. And therefore the Balchov will come and he's going to collect from the Idit at the time of the Gviyah because it's Benonit, right? During the time of the Halva. One more time. At the time of the Halva, the guy had Idit, Benonit, and Ziburit. So since during the time of the loan, he had Idit, he was supposed to collect this Benonit. So now when he sells the Idit, you cannot come and tell him, now this is Idit. No, because this is Benonit, right? So then he says, V'baitema, if you want, you could answer. Idi ve'idi, he comes and he says, Shelo hayta lo idit, he did not have idit, and he comes and he says, right, umecharat, and he sold it. It's not a question. Had the shavya benonit shelo ki idit de'alma. Here we're talking about that you have the benonit, which is considered like the idit, right? The kan and the first braita, telo shavya benonit shelo ki idit de'alma. The benonit is not shaveh to the idit of the entire world, and that's why the balchov, I could answer it. So one more time. The first answer was that since at the time of the loan you had Idit and then you had Benonit, so Mina Din is collecting this Benonit. So now that he sold the Idit, even though that the Benonit now became Idit, but the Benonit was the Benonit at the beginning. So therefore the Balchov collects from the Benonit. That's the first answer. Second answer is, really Be'emet, it was not, he never had really Idit during the time of the Halva. Right? What does that mean? See, he says over here, we're talking about the Braita Rishona, Braita Rishona, the Shniya. We're talking about Shelo hayta lo Idit. He didn't have Idit. Umechara, and then afterwards he went and he sold. So what are we talking about? We look at it, it's still not a question. Had the Shavya Benonit Shelo ki Idit, his Benonit is like Idit, right? And here Vekan in the first Braita we're talking about that the Benonit was not Shaveh to the Idit. Meaning, if you have a person that's very very affluent, maybe Be'emet his Benonit is Idit of the rest of the world, right? Very very rich people, right? For them, they don't even have an opaloka. They don't have for them, they're like ziburit, so could be sometimes aridit. You understand? Like it all depends on circumstances. If you want, you can answer another answer. Idi v'idi, really be'emet, both brightot. Kigon shayta benonit shelo kebenonit de'alma. No, he's on par to everybody else. But here the machloket is more savar, more holds b'shelo hen shamim, which means that they're going to evaluate it in himself, which means the balchov is going to be goveh beziburit, right? Because the benonit of the loveh is be'etzem idit, umor savar b'shel olam en shamim. Some people say, no, you go after the world. You remember we brought down that do we go after the world or do we go after the person himself? So this is the machlok. Do we go after the world or do we go after the person? That's a machlok between you. Okay? Now there's another one, a fourth way of how to answer the two braitot, which are stira. Okay? So Ravina comes and he says, Bede'ula kliya. Really, be'emet, the entire machloket, the yisod of machloket is machloket in ula. Tamar ula said, Zvar Torah, balchov beziburit. Do you know that really be'emet? A balchov should get ziburit. Shnemar, b'chutz ta'amod, v'ish asher nitanashe bo yotzi elecha ta'avot hachutza. Ma darko shel adam lotzi lachutz. What do you take outside? Pachut shebakelim, the worst of all the properties. Meaning, if you're already going to take something and leave it as a collateral, you're going to take from the worst of the things. You're not going to take the best. So, mina Torah, what should be done? A balchov should be in ziburit, the worst, the inferior. So, matam amru balchov. So, why did they say benonit? Kedei shelo tinon dele bifnei lavin. In order not to close the door on lendings, on that they're going to lend out monies on the lenders. More it le takanta deula. So more comes and he says, I hold this takana. More let le takanta deula. And the other writer holds that we don't hold the takana of ula, and therefore, according to that, he's going to collect ziburit. So therefore, it makes sense that he's going to collect from ziburit and not from benonit. Okay, nekuda. So those were just 4 different ways how to answer up the stira, right? About the machlokot. Do we hold? Right? Are you going to get the benonit or you're not going to get the benonit? We said no. He's collecting the benonit because either answer number 1, the guy already had edit, and since the guy already had edit, so therefore he was supposed to take this benonit. That was going to be the answer number 1. And answer number 2 was the different values, meaning his edit, right, was like the shuya of the benonit of the world. Third answer is really be'emet. It's equal like everything in the world. But the question is, do we go after the world or go after him? And fourth answer, ziburit really be'emet is a balchov. Balchov is beziburit. Why do we say that the balchov gets benonit? In order not to lock the doors on lending, right? We want that they should get good things for lending. So because of that, he comes and he says, there's machloket, do we actually hold them or not? Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Machar le'echad o lishlosha bnei adam ke'echad. Imagine right now you sell all your properties to one person or to 3 people. So you sold your edit, benonit, and ziburit to one person, right, in one day, or right, all the konim, or you sold it to 3 different people in one day, or to one person. So kulam nichnasu tachat baalim. Everybody goes instead of the baalim for gviyat chov, and therefore the one that's gove edit has paid the nizak. The one that's koneh benonit has to pay a malve, and the one that's koneh ziburit, he has to pay ketubat isha. So one more time, imagine right now we're talking about you bought the property. Now you didn't know there was a lien on it, and all of a sudden somebody comes and he says, "Okay, fine, he damaged me, pay up." So who pays up? The one that bought the edit. The next guy comes, he says, he owes me $100,000, pay up. Who was the one that had benonit? He has to pay back the balchov. The other one, the woman, comes and says, this guy's I don't know what, divorce, give me the ketubah. Who has to pay? Ziburit. Okay? So, what happens if they bought it though, one after another? Which means, right, yom achar yom, not on the same day, one day after another. Kulan govim min acharon. Everybody only collects from the last one. Vim enlo. Now, what happens if it doesn't have? Meaning it's not enough to pay back all 3 of the people. Govim mishalana. Then you go to one before. Enlo. Govim mishalif. Which means like this: when you buy 3 different properties, the seller he buys. Now nowadays, Baruch Hashem, there's title insurance and there's this and that to make sure that there's no liens on the property and nobody's going to come and they're going to take it away from you. Fine. Chazak u'baruch. The olden days, you didn't have that. So imagine right now the guy comes and he sells a field. So if it's all on the same day, that's what we said. If it's all on the same day or to one person, he has to pay back everything. Fine. Unless there's one after another. So he says the guy that sold the first day, when he sold, he could have sold. Why? Because everybody collect from the other field. When the second day, he could have sold. There's a third field. Another third, he couldn't have sold it because that field is now subjugated to all the other things. So the last guy loses out. He has to pay for everything. Whether it's the edit, he's gonna have to pay for the not the edit, meaning like the nizikin, he's gonna have to pay for everything. Everyone collects from him. But now what happens if it's not enough? There was somebody that came for damages, somebody came as a balchov, and the woman came for the ketubah. And there's not enough. So you go to the one before. What happens if there's still not enough? You go to the one before. Meaning you continue going back until you collect the funds that you needed to collect. Says the Gemara, what's the case if you sold it to one person? If you're going to tell me that you sold it to one person in one shot, right? If there's three people, and still you're going to tell me the one person came first, still you said, obviously, if you sold it to one person, what's the question? If you sold all your property to one person, obviously that person is going to pay back everything, whether it's to the Nizikin, Balchov, and the Ktubat Isha. So says but rather it's one after another. So what are we talking about now that you have three different people buying? Each one could say, I left you a place where to collect. Right? Which is the Koneh Shlishi. Hainami, so to here. On every single property, he could say, I left you a place to collect. And therefore, right, even if it's going to be ziburit, you could only collect from the ziburit. Meaning the reason why I brought one person was obviously that you're collecting from that one person. There's no doubt. But the chidush is that when you're going to collect, he could say, I bought the first idita, you could only collect from the ziburit. You bought all the properties. Doesn't matter. But it was all in one, it wasn't in one shot, it was but it doesn't matter. So therefore, now he could say, I left you a place to collect. What is that? Ziburit. Collect from the ziburit. Okay? So says the Gemara, what are we dealing with? No. What happens if he purchased the idit last? Now, if he purchased the ziburit last, he could have said that. I left you a place to collect from, and therefore everybody has to collect from the ziburit. But what happens if he bought the idit at the end? So he says, he bought the idit at the end. So says the Gemara, if so why doesn't everybody collect from idit then? Everybody should collect from idit. Because if the svara, the logic, that I left you a place to collect, means that the last place, the last property, that's where you're going to collect from, it's idit. So let him collect, everybody should collect from the idit. Says the Gemara, if so, idit. And so the Gemara, Mishum Damar Lehu, they could say, if you're going to take like the halacha, shaklitu, take it. And if not, the guy has a migu. You know what the migu is? The guy could come and say, migu, you know what? Listen, guys, listen very, very carefully. If you guys want, what we could do is like this. It's either you're going to take like your halacha. What's halacha? You're, let's say, you're a balchov, taking the meronit. You bought the idit last, and that's what I want to collect from. No. Take from the Meronit. The woman, take from the Ziburit. Now you're going to say, but Ribono Shalom, why? I'm sorry, you bought it last. He's going to tell you, you know what? Let's make a deal. It's either you take it like your halacha, or I take it back to its master. If I take it back to its master, anyway, you're only collecting from the Ziburit and from the thing. And therefore, what happens is, right, that then everybody will be able to come and collect from the Ziburit. Okay? So Yihaki, if so, says on Chetamu Bet, 8b, Nizikin Nami Nimachi, right? So also the Nizikin say the exact same thing, right? Say the exact same concept, right? That he could come and he could be Ma'ayim, right? And he could start saying, you know, like a Lachrich, that he's going to be a Zakai. Ella, but rather, what are we dealing with? The Yatme. We're talking about Yitomim, orphans. The love Bene Piraoninu. That the orphans do not have to pay the chovot of their father, right? The Shibuda delay, and the Shibud is on the chov of the father, Aledi de Ramya is on him, of the person that's buying it. And therefore, since the koneh, the purchaser, cannot be me'ayem, he cannot threaten on the nizak to do this thing, so therefore, right, this entire concept, okay? So he says, Hilkach lekel me'machi, so therefore you cannot say this, okay? Ela baradu, mishum da'amar lehu ta'ama, ma'yamur rabbanan, what's the reasoning why the rabbi said this? Any from chasim mishubadim, במקום שיש בני חורין, משום תקנת דידי, Anna, right? He comes and he says, Anna, he says, I don't want this. I don't want this takana. Yeah? He comes and he says, I don't want this takana. It's not good for me. So says the Gemara, Kidrava, like Rava. Te'amar Rava, but Rava says, Kol ha'omer yirshi b'takana chachamim, kigon zu shomilnu. If a person comes and he says, you know what? I want to be vater on takanat chachamim. I don't want it. Meaning like this, if right now, Chachamim come and make a takana, and the takana was to help me, to benefit me, and I come in and say, you know what, I just don't want it. We listen to you. Why? Because basically, Shomim, we listen to you, we say, you know what, no problem, you don't want it, you don't want it. Mike Kigonzu, what does it mean now? Kigonzu. He says, "Kedaravuna like Ravuna." The Amar Ravuna, but says Ravuna, "Yichola isha shutuma lebala, eni nizor v'nosav leduma." A woman has a takana, right? That she gets parnasa from the husband. Can a woman come and say, you know what? I don't want to get parnasa from you. Meaning, don't give me food, right? But I'm not working. What does that mean? I'm not giving you what I work, which means I'm going to work and I get the money. And then I pay for my own food. She could do that. Why? Because since the takana was for her benefit, she could say, I don't want the takana. And we listen to her. We accept it. So says the Gemara, 1 second. Okay, that makes sense. But now let's say like this. Pshita, it's pashut. Machal lokeach benonit v'ziburit. That if he's going to come and sell the benonit and ziburit, the shier idit, and he left over the idit lefanav, everyone's going to collect from the idit. Ta'acharonahi, because it was the last thing. If benonit v'ziburit, there's no more benonit and ziburit. Okay, the matzi lememelo, they could say, gevu mi benonit v'ziburit. Telo nichale believe v'takanta the rabbanan. Yes, I don't want this takan of the rabbanan. Aval machar idit v'shier benonit v'ziburit. But if he sold the idit, and he left behind the benonit and the ziburit to my what's halacha? Sav Rabbi wanted to say, Atu kulu gaved. Everybody could come and collect the idit. So Amalei Rabba comes and he says, Mama achar rishon l'sheni kol zchut shetavo liyado. What did he sell? He sold any zechut that comes to his hands. Ve'kevan di'ilu atu, and since if he's going to come, gabelekach rishon matzi agbele, right? They could come, they could be gove from benonit and ziburit. Ve'af al pi techizavni benonit and ziburit akati idit. And still, right, when they're going to come and they're going to buy the benonit and ziburit, still the idit is still benechorim. You cannot come and take from a property, right, which is mishubad, if you have a property which is benechorim, which means like this: a person has a house and they have a mashkanta, they have a mortgage. They have a second house that has no mortgage. They're going to collect from the house that has no mortgage before collecting from the house that has a mortgage. Because if you have a nechasim mishubadim, so there's nothing to do then. What are you doing? What are you collecting from nechasim mishubadim from a property that says collect from a property that doesn't have a lien? So he says, Amale, Matzi Amale, he could say, no, I don't want this takana. And therefore they could collect from the benonit and ziburit. Well, sheni, that means also the sheni could say the same thing. Kavim benonit and ziburit. He wants to buy all the same zechuyot of the first person. So what's going on then? So therefore, they're going to be goveh their chov from the benonit and the ziburit, which is in the first guy, right? Just like they're going to collect from now. So Amar Rava comes and he says, Reuven shemachar kol salotav leShimon. Reuven that he comes and he's going to purchase all the sadot to Shimon. V'alach Shimon umachar sadeh achal Levi. He comes and he's going to sell it to Levi, and the Baal Chov is going to come and Reuven mizeh goveh rotzeh mizeh goveh. If he wants, he could collect. He could collect from whichever one he wants. He could goveh from Levi or from Shimon. One more time, Reuven sells all his sadot, right? Reuven shemachar the Shimon in one shot, and then Shimon comes and he sells one field to Levi. So Reuven gives over all his power to Shimon. Shimon sold one to Levi. The Baal Chov of Reuven could come and he could collect from whichever one he wants, either from Shimon or from Levi. Velo amram, but one of these words, only if he sold benonit, right? But if he was zavan edit v'ziburit, then no. Elmaleh he could tell. That's why I bought that. I bought edit and ziburit exactly precisely because of that. Something that cannot be for you. Afilu zavan benonit nami lo amran. And even if he bought benonit, we didn't say it. He didn't leave any benonit left over. He can't say Shimon. But if he did leave benonit by Shimon, you cannot take from Levi. Lo gavamine. You could tell him, I left your place back. So one more time. Reuven sells everything to Shimon, and he's got a Baal Chov coming to get it from him. Now Shimon came and he sold the field to Levi. So he says, you could collect from Levi or from Shimon, whichever one that you want. Says the Gemara, one of those words, right? If there's no more benonit by Shimon, but if there was benonit by Shimon, Levi could send you back flying to Shimon and say, I left your place back. Go to Shimon, don't come to me. Or if he sold to Levi the ziburit and the idit, he could go back to, I only bought the idit the ziburit purposely. I don't want you to come to me. You can't come to me. So Amar Abaye says, now another case. Amar Reuven shemachar sadeh leShimon b'achrayut. What happens if he sold them the field, but with achrayut? Achrayut means with a guarantee. Somebody takes it away from you, I have to pay you back. And comes the Baal Chov of Reuven, and he takes it from Shimon. Tino Oziel Reuven Mishtah Din Madeh. Reuven could come and do the din with him, right? With Bal Chof to take him out. The Lo Matzi Amarle, he cannot tell him La Bal Devim Didiat. You're not with me. The Amarle, because he could tell him Imi Pat Mine Alayadar. If you're going to take it away the field from Shimon, right? He's going to again take it again, which means this Negiyav Reuven, right, in the Inyan, is making him into a Baldin. Because since he took it as a collateral, he's still a Baldin. And therefore he could come and take to the Baldin, Balchov. Meaning like this, we do not say that Reuven went out of the picture when he sold the field. Because since he still has a Achrayut, which means that if somebody takes away from Shimon, he has to pay it back. So it's kiru that he's still in the deal. So when he comes to court, they're not going to say, what do you have to do with the case? No. He has to do with the case. Some people say, even if he doesn't have Achrayut, that means he doesn't sell the field with Achrayut, also it's the same name. Why? He could say, I don't want Shimon to have complaints on me. Meaning, even if I don't have to pay Shimon back, I don't want the complaints. And therefore, I'm taking you to court. And therefore, you are my Baldbarim. That means you can't come and say in court, no. You're my Baldbarim. Okay, and Rabbi also says, right? So then again, there's going to be a whole question here as well, because we're going to stop this.